So the first thing we want to talk about is that when you look at the stock market, if you actually go on like CNN Money or Yahoo or Google Finance, and you pick out one company and you just look at the price and you just sit there, it's changing all the time by pennies or by dollars or whatever, because every time there's a trade that occurs, the price of the stock changes every single trade, and it'll go up or down depending. And so if you were to graph all of those changes all day long or all month long, it's a very, very jagged line. And it's very hard to see the patterns in these really, really jagged lines. And so what happens is they use math to create what's called a smoothing technique, and it reduces the noise. It makes, like, the graph, instead of being so jagged, it does become more smooth, and it actually gives you a better picture of the pattern of what's happening. So these are statistical tools. So like statistical analysis. This gives you the big picture, so you can see the big picture of what's actually happening instead of all the little jaggedy details that are very hard to follow. Okay, the simple moving average is one smoothing technique, and it's a pretty popular smoothing technique. And you so you take the average, so you can have like a 5-day or a 10-day or a 3-day, and you take the average of the stock over those 5 days, starting on Monday, let's say, and then you shift 1 day over and take 5 days, and you shift 1 day over and take 5 days, and it makes the graph less jagged. The average is also known as the arithmetic mean. So you take the total and you divide it by the number of numbers you added. Yeah.
What's the word for fluctuations?
Price, sorry. Sometimes my handwriting is not so good. Price fluctuations. Okay, and then lagging indicators. You guys know what it means to lag, right? Like you're falling behind. And so a lagging indicator, a simple moving average, or pretty much all of these smoothing techniques are lagging indicators because they're using past data. And we can only use past data, right? Because we can't calculate future data because we don't have it. But these are called a lagging indicator. We're going to do, we have 10 days of closing prices for some random unnamed stock. And we're going to calculate the 5-day SMA. SMA stands for simple moving average. Okay, and we're going to plot both of them on a graph. And so what I want to do first is, if you go to the next square, you have like a blank graph. So I'm going to plot the daily ones first, and then I'm going to plot the SMAs after we calculate them. But I want to show you the jaggedness of the daily prices. So I'm going to go up where every single one of these lines is a quarter. So 34.50, and then 35, and then 35.50, and then 36, 36.50. Okay, so that'll give me a large enough scale. And the reason I started at 34 is because if you go back to your prices, the cheapest that the stock ever was 34.65, and then the most expensive that it ever is on here is 37.07. So if I go between 34 and 38, I've got myself covered. And I've got 10 days. And so to give myself space, I'm going to make every 2 lines 1 day. Okay. And on day 1, we were 35.02. So you can look at this. So 35.02. So on day 1, we're just a little bit above 35. And on day 2, we're at 35.01. So pretty much in the same place, because the penny's not going to show up a lot on this particular graph. Then we're at 34.65. Whoops, that's not day 2. This is day 2. Okay, so day 3 is 34.65. Here's 34.50. Here's 34.75. So I'm somewhere in between there. And day 4 is 36.09. So here's $36. This is 36.25. So 36.09 is somewhere a little below halfway. Day 5, I'm 35.32. So 35.25. 50, so I'm between 25 and 50. Day 6, I'm actually at 35.50. Day 7, I'm 35.03, so just right above 35. Day 8, I'm 35.79, so here's 35.50, 35.75, so I'm just above that. And then day 9, I'm 37.07. And then day 10, I'm 36.05. Okay. And then I connect these. And it's kind of all over the place. Is this stock going up or is it coming down? I mean, it's gone up and has come down, but is it trending up or is it trending down? Okay. We can know for sure if we do the simple moving average. So once we've got the picture drawn here, we'll go back and calculate, and then we'll graph the simple moving average on the same graph, and we can compare the two and see how much easier one is to look at than the other. All right, so we're going to calculate a 5-day simple moving average. That means we're going to take, it's 5 days and it moves. That's why it's called a simple moving average, is because it moves. So what we do is we start and we do days 1 through 5. And then we do days 2 through 6. And then we do days 3 through 7. And then we do days 4 through 8. Need more colors. Orange. And then we do 5 through 9. And then we do 6 through 10. So we're going to do 5-day blocks, and we're going to move through the days from the first day until we hit the 10th day. Does that make sense? Sort of. And so if we're doing a 10-day data set for a 5-day moving average, we actually do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 calculations. So far, okay? All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to take those first 5 days, so 1 through 5, and that takes me from 3502 to 3532. I'm going to add those together. And I'm adding together 5 numbers, so I divide by 5. And when you add them together, okay, so you get 17609 over 5, and when you divide it, you get 35.218, so 35.22. Okay, so that's the average for the first 5 days. And then we come in and we do the second 5 days. So day 2 through day 6, the green one. Maybe I should label these like this one's yellow. Next we're going to do green. So you add days 2 through 6 together by 5. So, yeah. Sure.
Just get to make a book online. It was really easy to understand.
Okay.
So, okay. Thank you.
Okay, so far okay? Yeah? Good, bad? That good, huh? All right. So that was days 1 through 5, 2 through 6. We're next going to do 3 through 7. So we're starting here, 3465. Divide that by 5, and you get 3531. That's day 10. So that's where you stop. So you'll stop at day 10. And then when you calculate these out, you're going to get 3555, 3574, and 3589. Okay, so these are our simple moving average prices. We calculated those, and I'm going to plot them on the same graph. So here's how it works though. When you plot the simple moving average, you don't start on day 1. You start on the last day in the group. So if you were to look at, we had that list that said 3502 and then 3501 and then 3465, 3609, and 3532. That was the first 5 days. The simple moving average starts here on day 5, and that was 3522. So you don't start plotting at day 1, you start plotting at the last day in the first group. Does that make sense? Yeah. Yes, SMA, simple moving average. Okay, so I'm going to do we did the regular graph in blue, so I'm going to do the simple moving average in red. How about red? Red's good. So I start with day 5 to plot my first one, which is 35.22. Here's 35.25, so I'm just a little bit below there. And then I'm 35.31, so I'm just a little bit above here. 35.32, so pretty much basically almost the same place. Then 35.55, so up here a little bit above that. And then 35.74, so almost to there. And then 35.89, so kind of above that. And if I connect these dots, I have a much smoother line. And it's much more clear that this stock is trending up. Even though the last day it went down, but the general trend is that it's moving up. So you might say, okay, well, this stock is increasing in value. I'm going to buy it now, let it earn some more money, and then I'll sell it later and get some money off of that. Okay, so when you have the SMA, it'll be like let's say a 5-day SMA like that one just did, or it'll say a 3-day SMA or a 10-day SMA. That's how many numbers you group, whatever the number of the days is. So if it's a 3-day, you do the first 3 and then shift over, do the second 3, shift over, do the next 3. If it's a 10-day, you do 10. 7-day, usually it's 3, 5, or 10, but maybe somebody might do it by 7. Now, this technique where we wrote it all out every time and then divided by 5 works. Visually, it's very easy to see what you're doing, but it is kind of time consuming. So I'm going to show you a shorter way to do it that doesn't require you to write all this much out or type in that much into the calculator every time, but it's not so visually easy. And so you can use this method or you can use the next method I show you. It doesn't matter to me which one you use. You use the one that makes the most sense. Okay? So what we're going to do is there's the subtraction addition method. And so what you do is you calculate the first group. And then you're going to subtract and add and divide. So you still add and divide, and then you subtract and add and divide. So I'm going to walk you through it. So I have this 121, 122, 120, 119. These are my days, right? So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 days. And I want to do a 4-day SMA. So again, I'm going to have a group of 4 numbers here. And then I'm going to move over 1, and I'm going to have 4 numbers here. And then I'm going to move over 1, and I'll have 4 numbers here. And then I move over 1, and I have those 4 numbers. Okay, so that's my breakup. So I'm going to be calculating 4 times on this one. And so, oops, wrong pencil. So for my first one, I calculate like normal. Okay. So I'm going to take that 121 plus 122 plus 120 plus 119, and I'm going to divide it by 4. So normal average. And I get 482 divided by 4. Now, it's important that you write this step down. If you don't write this step down, that's kind of okay, as long as you're like making marks like I did here with the color or something, so you can keep track of where you are. But this step you want to write down because you're going to need that. You need that number right there to make this technique work. So I divide by 4. Oops. And I'm going to get 120.50. So that's my first calculation. Now for my second calculation, I subtract the first Okay, so here's my list, right? So for the yellow, I just did purple. Now I want to do yellow. And to make yellow happen, I take out 121 and I add in 124. So I take that 482, I subtract 121, I add in 124, and I divide it by 4. Well, 121 and negative 121 plus 120, that's 3. So you see that, how those two make a 3? So it's 482 plus 3. So it's 485 divided by 4. And I get 121.25. And I need this number now. And I repeat, I subtract the first one from the yellow. So I do 485 minus 122. I take that 122 out and I bring the 128 in. Well, the difference between 122 and 128 is 6. So I'm going to be adding 6 to the 485. And I get 491 divided by 4. And then that was the red. So now I want to do the green. So I'm going to take 491 and I'm going to take this 120 out and I'm going to put the 126 in. Which gives me 497 divided by 4. $124.25. These will be the same no matter which technique you use. The 482, 485, those will be the same. It's just this part that is changing. And so to me, I don't care which way you do it. If I'm going to move the page for a second. If this way makes more sense to you, do it this way. If this way makes sense to you and you like the shortcut, do it this way. I'm not going to say, oh no, I wanted you to do it this way, so this is wrong. It's however it makes sense to you, that's the way you need to do it. The real benefit of a simple moving average is when you take two different time intervals and you graph them on the same graph. So you would do like a 3-day moving average and a 10-day moving average on the same graph, and it will allow you to predict stock behavior. Fairly accurate, not 100% accurately, because there's no such thing as a 100% prediction of the stock market. That's not possible, but you can get a fairly accurate prediction. And so what you have is you have what's called a fast moving average and a slow moving average. And the fast moving average is the shorter time interval. So if you were talking about a 10-day and a 3-day, the 3-day would be fast. And then the slow moving average is the longer time interval. And so that's the larger number. And like a 5 is fast if you're comparing it to a 3, but then, or sorry, 5 is slow if you're comparing it to a 3, but then it's fast if you compare it to a 10. So it's a comparison thing. Like 10s aren't always fast. Or 10s aren't always slow. It just depends on what the other number is. It's a comparison between the two numbers that you're graphing on the same chart. And what you look for is crossovers. Okay, so crossovers occur when the slow-moving and fast-moving averages cross each other on the graph. Okay, so the two lines that you graph will actually cross, intersect and cross. And when this happens, there's a theory, and it's a prediction. It's like I said, it's not 100%, but these are predictions that when the fast moving overtakes, if the fast moving overtakes the slow, you buy. And if the slow moving overtakes the fast, you sell. Or you could think of it as the fast goes over top, you buy, and if the fast goes below, you sell. So if you want to think of it just in terms of fast, so when fast goes up, you buy. When fast goes down, you sell. That's the theory. And because what it's doing is it's predicting that when the fast goes over the slow, it's saying, okay, the price here is going to increase. And so you buy it, you buy low, sell high. That's how you make money in the stock market, right? So the price is going to start to increase when the fast overtakes the slow. So you buy now when it's lower, and then it'll increase. And then when the fast goes below the slow, it's going to start going down again. So you sell before it loses its value. Okay, so that's the theory. Average for a company called Vantage Point Intermarket Analysis Software US Dollar Index. I know it. But what happens is the 5-day and 10-day. Right, so remember the fast is the shorter. So this is fast. And this is slow. And the crossovers are occurring here, here, and here. So far, okay? Now, if you look on your next slide, it's blank. Okay. So you can write like some notes on there if you want to. I'm going to flip back and forth between there to write this down. So if we're analyzing this, here we have, this is kind of a catch-all graph. You have the actual stock bar data with the simple moving averages graphed all together. So you can see the real price, the real open and close, the fast moving average, and the slow moving average. So we're coming along, and right here the fast goes above the slow. Okay, so when the fast goes above the slow, you buy. So right here you would buy, and then when we come back here, this drops down, so you would sell. And if you look, the actual prices didn't drop yet, but then they plummeted. But then it comes back here, and the price is still pretty cheap, but it's going to come up above, so you would buy. And there are computer programs that will calculate this ongoing. And so what would happen is you'd see this crossover happen, so the next day you would buy. Or here you see this crossover happen, so the next day you'd sell. And you'd be selling in this range when it was still pretty decent before it fell down here. Do you see what I mean? So this is a fairly decent predictor of what's about to happen. This crossover occurred. It wasn't that much of a change right in here. You might not have seen it if you were just looking at a single graph. But then it went really high. Do you see what I mean? So that's what that's useful for. So most well-known Dow Jones, you guys have heard of the Dow. You know, like on the news, the Dow closed at blah, blah, blah. Some guy. Okay. The Dow tracks 30 large corporations. It's not by any means the entire stock market, because there's, I don't know how many corporations exist on the planet. There's lots. But the Dow tracks 30, like the 30 largest corporations or 30 major corporations. And the idea is that if you look at the activity and the health of those 30 corporations, it gives you a general overview of the health of the whole economy. Not always accurate, but close. So the first stock information transmission machine was invented by Thomas Edison in 1869. So that's how old the stock market is. It's actually older than that. But he invented the first transmission machine, and it was called the Universal Stock Ticker. And it was like it ticked. That's why it's called a ticker, because it was like a typewriter, kind of, in a thing with like tape, like a piece of paper tape, and they would type one character per second. And so it'd be like tick, 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 tick. So yeah, on a little tiny tape. And that's why it's called a ticker. And so they were connected through telegraph machines. And that's how the information would be transmitted from one to the other. And it was an automatic thing. They would just sit there and tick away. And you'd have these big long tapes, and people would come up to the ticker and go, oh, look at that, and start looking at the tape and seeing what was happening on the stock market. As a matter of fact, nowadays we have, the computerized ticker. I don't know if you guys ever watch like CNN News, and along the bottom of the screen there's that like blue bar, and stuff is just scrolling across there all the time. Stock market will do that. In Times Square and Wall Street, they have billboard with the stock market ticker across it. You can have computer app that'll put the stock market across the bottom of your screen, and the symbols are still the same. So if you go and you look up a real-time quote, like if you go to Google or CNN Money or something and you look up a stock quote, you get more information that has been transcribed from a ticker. But if you still read the ticker, the symbols are still the same. So I'm going to teach you guys how to read that, like that's scrolling across the bottom of the screen. So what you get is you get symbols. Okay, so it's a letter or a symbol. Well, letters. Oh, I'm totally in the wrong definition right here. Sorry, letters. Just letters, not symbols. Okay. So there are letters used to identify a corporation. The New York Stock Exchange has 1, 2, or 3. Okay. NASDAQ used to have only 4. But now, if some things have transferred from the New York Stock Exchange to the NASDAQ, and so there's 3. Okay. And then different, or 3, I guess it could be 2 or 1 also, but it used to be only 4. Okay. The trading volume is the number of shares traded in a single trade. So everything that comes across the ticker at the bottom is every individual person that's buying stocks transactions. Okay. Now it does use shorthand. K for 1,000, M for 1,000,000, and B for billion, but that's pretty rare. Okay. And then you have the trading price, which is the price per share. And then that is after the @ symbol. But that's not always used. It depends on who's putting out the information. But most often it's after that @ symbol. And then the directional arrows. You have an arrow going up if the price was higher than last trade. And then you have an arrow going down if the price was lower. And then that is followed by the difference. So, for example, AT&T is ATT. So you would see ATT 5K at 32.75 up 42 cents. And so that would say that there were 5,000 shares of AT&T were traded for that 32 whatever money I just said, and then that was 40 whatever cents up from the last time it was traded. So it went up 40 cents. Example, okay? She had some sales of Visa, and she's interested in seeing if there are any current trades, and so she's looking at the ticker, and this is what the ticker looked like right there. So we want to say, okay, what does this mean? Okay, well, the V equals Visa. Okay, and it's one letter, so it's most likely New York Stock Exchange. 12K indicates 12,000 shares. Okay, that at 87.37 means that they were $87.37 each. The up arrow and then that 0.12, 0.12 means that it was 12 cents higher than the last trade. So it gained 12 cents. Ticker. We've got this guy, and he wants to sell all 3,000 of his Coca-Cola shares as soon as the price hits $57 a share. And he knew that it closed at $57.25 before, so how will it appear on the ticker? Okay, well, Coca-Cola is KO. Okay. And he wants to sell 3,000 shares. So you're going to get 3K for 3,000 at $57. And since it was $57.25 before, it's going to be down 25 cents. Sorry, 0.25. Does that make sense? Where I got all those? We've got this giant triangle. Anyway, Tony purchased 15,000 shares of stock at $54.88 per share, and her ticker appeared like this. But we want to know the total value of her trade. Total value of her trade is the number of shares. So let's write it here. So you're going to take the number of shares and you're going to multiply it by the price per share. Okay. So whenever something like this appears on the ticker where it's 15,000 at 54.88, that means somebody had $823,200 to go around buying Target stock with. To figure out the trade volume, if it's a K, you multiply by 1,000, and if it's an M, you multiply by 1,000,000. So 2.5K is 2.5 times 1,000, and 3.89 M is 3.89 times 1,000,000. Okay, you'll need to be able to do that to do the trade volumes. And so if we have Grandpa and he has 8,000, yeah.
2.5 condition and 25,000.
It's 2,500 because this decimal place and the 10 cancel each other out. So Grandpa left Nicole, Jeff, and Kristen Apple stock in his will, and then they sold it. And we want to know, how would it appear on the stock ticker? So they sold it for $190.30, and the closing price the day before was $187.83. So first we need to figure out what the difference is. So I'm going to take that $190.30 and subtract the $187.83. And we have a difference of $2.47. Okay, so the ticker is going to be Apple. Okay, 8,750 shares. See where that comma is? That's where the decimal is going to go. So 8.75K at 190.30, and it went up because Friday was more than Thursday, 247. So that's what the ticker would look like on that one.